thanks for tuning in to episode number one of Structures, the place for creatives to share the journey. I'd like for my guest to introduce yourself today. Who am I talking to?
Sure. My name's Eric Maines, and I'm behind the independent music project called Saves the Witch.
Awesome. Where can people find you?
SavesTheWitch.com is the best way, but I'm on all the streaming platforms as well: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, things like that. Website has links to all of that, of course.
Awesome. And also, I want to just say thanks. I'm grateful for your time today, and really look forward to learning more about you and just putting some love out there in the world. So why don't you give us just a little snapshot of who you are today? Who is Eric today in your life, your family, your music, and whatever you want to share?
Sure. So I know we'll kind of get in. And by the way, thanks for doing this. I feel really honored to be the first one on the show. I know we'll talk music and some other stuff as well.
Yeah.
A good snapshot, I guess, is you know I'm just kind of a normal person. I live in Southport, North Carolina, which is for some people that don't know, that's probably about an hour north of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Originally from Kentucky. Live here with my wife. We've been married for almost, I think it's actually going to be 20 years in a few months.
Oh,
Um,
congratulations.
oh, thanks. You know, as far as me outside of music, really like to play video games. I'm a little bit of a gamer, not quite as seriously as I used to be.
Hmm.
Do that for fun. I love to read. I have a day job, just like a lot of indie musicians. I'm a software consultant for a public safety company, so that's what I do during the day, and try to play music as much as I can. Sometimes when inspiration strikes, it gets recorded. Most of the time, it doesn't. It's just me kind of messing around. But you know, um, when I put together this project, I've technically speaking, I guess I've been playing music since I was about 7 years old. My great grandmother, actually lived a while. I think she passed away when I was about 9 or 10 or something. But she actually bought me my first guitar when I was 7. I never really learned how to play the damn thing that well though until
Yeah.
until I was an adult. I actually kind of started out more on drums. That was my first serious instrument, and just kind of went from there. When I was like a teenager, I played in some bands. Transitioned from drums over to guitar and singing. Did that for a while with a band that was, I guess, a little bit more like an alternative rock thing. I wouldn't necessarily say, heavy, more like hard rock, or alternative is a better word. We did that for a while before I moved. Technically, the band we never said we broke up, so I guess technically we're
Yeah.
probably still together, right?
Right on.
If no one says it, it's not real, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I moved once I moved, to another state. I couldn't play with my band anymore, so I kind of moved into doing the singer songwriter thing and played a little bit of folk. I put out a horribly produced album under a different name doing that thing. And I don't know what it was. About, I guess it's been 3, 4 years ago, maybe even, I guess about 4. I don't know. But when I started this project, um, it just kind of was a difficult time in my life then. And I was starting to kind of, just put some pieces of it back together, and was, feeling really inspired that things were starting to go well. And I looked back at all the good parts of my life and all the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of realized that the better parts of my life music was always more present during those times.
Right.
And I had not touched a guitar in about a 3 year span or something like that. And at
Wow.
some point, I just decided, you know, I'm going to get a new guitar, because I haven't had a new guitar in like forever.
Yeah.
So I got a new guitar and sat down, and I just told myself, yeah, I'm really going to just start playing again. And somehow Saves the Witch kind of came up out of that.
I wanted to ask actually, what is the story behind the name Saves the Witch?
I get that a lot. So originally it was going to be Save the Witch, and that idea was basically formed out of, you know, back in the day, kind of an unfortunate part of history with the Salem witchcraft trials and things like that. I
Yeah.
know I'm oversimplifying the issue, but I look at that specific part of history and think that just because someone was different than us,
Right.
we were burning them at the stake. And
Right.
so the name was kind of born out of, instead of being afraid of each other's differences, to actually embrace each other's differences, because we see it all the time. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
easiest to point to politics, but it could be in anything. We just, things feel divisive a lot,
Yeah.
and that's how the name came up. And then I added the S for two reasons. There was an old project with the name already on Spotify. They didn't have a lot of listeners or anything, and it was a completely different country. It wasn't in the States.
Hmm.
And I kind of considered, well, nothing says I can't use the same name, but should I consider something else? And I actually thought adding the S changed the dynamic of it a bit, because it took it from a command,
Yeah.
like save, to saves, as in something that is
You're doing it.
in progress or has happened. So I felt there was more action
Yeah.
to the name just by adding that, I guess, little letter. So that's how it came about.
I love that. I love the whole idea behind that. That's great. I got
Thanks,
some
man.
pictures here that you sent me. Do you have those in front of you now?
Um, I can. So
Okay. Yeah.
I, I
Tell us a little
so
bit about
let's
what you're sharing with us here.
okay. Yeah. So you had asked maybe for a few pictures. I sent you a few. Here they are. So yeah, I wanted to get a few things, because I know when we talked, pre-show,
Hmm.
you kind of wanted some music and some non-music stuff. So I just kind of sent, the first one I sent is actually a picture of me when I was 17, and I'm playing at the Bluebird Cafe, and I believe that was on an open mic night. But the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville is, you know, really famous, and has had folks on the stage from like Willie Nelson to all these names.
Wow.
And I think that was an open mic night. I went down there, so not nothing super special, but just that was back when I was playing with the guys, and kind of did a little solo thing there. I think only did two or three songs. Um, there's another picture I had sent, and this one has me playing a Telecaster in it.
Yep.
This is actually one of my favorite pictures of me as far as music goes, because this one has kind of a funny story.
Well, it looks
Number
freaking cool
one,
too. So there's
it,
that.
it does, yeah, it does look a little badass.
Yeah.
If I set aside modesty for a second, I think it is pretty badass. But so that was me playing with my old band when I was a teen. It was our last, if not the last, it was one of our last times we played out together. And what had actually happened in that photo is, if you look kind of close at the bottom of the guitar, the strap on the
Strap.
bottom is kind of half on and half off.
Yep.
What actually happened was the top part of the strap like came loose. I wasn't using strap locks because I was an idiot.
Right.
And so I could feel the guitar start to fall, and I just tried to get my leg up under it and just fell down with it and played the last 20 seconds of the song like that. Probably looked like I did that on purpose. I didn't really. I was
That's
just
what I was
trying not
gonna
to drop
say.
my
Yeah.
guitar.
I meant to do that kind of look. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going for anyway. Like, I meant to do that. Sure, why
That's
not?
cool. That's cool.
Yeah. Um, let's see, what else do we got here? I sent you a picture of my healer, Apollo. That's one of our pups. So we got two pups. We got a black lab named Navi, after the fairy from Legend of Zelda, and then we have Apollo, Blue Healer. Apollo is actually named after Good Apollo, one of my favorite albums from Coheed and Cambria,
Oh,
my
cool.
favorite band. Um, let's see. Sent you a picture of the lab as well,
Mm-hmm.
Navi, and sent you a picture of our kitty cat, Lulu. She's, I say this kind of half serious and half joking. I try to stay light about it. She's probably going to kill over about any day. She's like, I think 21 or 22 years old. She's lived so long.
Wow.
There's such a great little kitty cat. Um, and then the other two pictures I sent you were just more modern pictures of me. One of them where I have kind of the mohawk going on
Mm-hmm.
is a little bit of just a one of the setups I had. I think that was maybe a year ago. It wasn't that long ago. And then the other one I sent you is just kind of a headshot that was fairly recent. I think within the last month. So let the mohawk go away a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll come back one day. But yeah.
I got one more picture from you of your pedal board. Is that what you're currently using, or is that just
Oh,
one from the
oh,
past?
you're right. Yeah, you're right. You do.
I see your
No, that's
beloved
so.
rainbow machine on the bottom row.
Yeah. So no, so that is a picture. And you have to excuse the wires because that part's a mess. But no, that is as of day before yesterday. That's my current pedal board.
Oh, I
And
got
I
that
mean,
hot
I
off
could.
the press then. That's yeah.
You got that one, yeah, hot off the press. And I mean, I could talk pedals with you probably all day, and I'm not no expert. I just really love them.
That's a
But
different
I haven't.
podcast. Yeah, that's because we could go
Yeah,
on all day.
I haven't actually changed my pedal board in a while though. I think it's been a good solid 5 or 6 months before I've swapped anything out. So I think that's one that's pretty standard with me. I've spent really about 2.5 years just experimenting and finding the things that I really want to use and that I want to keep. There's uh there's some redundancy and reverb on it, but it fits the kind of music I play. But yeah, no, that's the current pedal board setup.
It's been my experience. More reverb is more better anyway. So
Right,
it's a
I
matter of
agree.
taste, I suppose. But I like reverb. All
I
right,
do too. I do too.
let's backtrack, man. You gave us a great overview. Let's dive a little bit deeper into your journey. You said when you started music and all that, but what were some of the growing pains in your artistic journey that or some obstacles you had to overcome or goals you reached throughout your music journey?
Sure. Well, let's talk about obstacles first because that seems to come to mind a little easier. I think the obstacles with music depends on a few factors. It depends on the person, and it depends on you know so much. I think the first obstacle is actually yourself.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny because sometimes you have folks that are very introverted and they want to express themselves, and sometimes the only way they know how to do that is with music. um, and they have different obstacles than maybe I have because I'm not introverted. I probably talk too much. You could ask my wife about that probably. But for me, the first obstacle is yourself because you want to, when you're creating something, you want to do it in a genuine way, you know. And
Absolutely.
sometimes, as odd as that sounds, that can be difficult. I mean, I've written things before where it's like when I'm done with it, I look at it and I'm like, I don't know if that's really me or not, and if it is me, is it superficial?
Right.
Um, so I think the first obstacle is yourself, and then another obstacle is in the days when I would play like folk stuff and I sang more, putting lyrics with music is kind of a whole different animal.
Yeah.
And that's what most folks are doing. Most music styles, you have words, but the words are an obstacle because you want to be genuine, but you want to put those words in a way that's going to express what you mean.
Right.
Now, with this project, it has been mainly instrumental. It may or may not, stay exactly like that. my voice is honestly kind of a little shot from my younger days, screaming and singing and stuff. But I think with instrumental music, I was really inspired. When I did this, I didn't set out to do it as an instrumental. Um, well, we can get into that later, but I think the obstacle with instrumental music is that you have to convey feeling without words. Um, but I've long said in some of the little, blog and print interviews and stuff that I've done over the years that I feel like sometimes that can make it more powerful. You know,
Yeah.
um, I've actually heard songs before where I'm like, wow, I'm really connecting with this music. And I don't really get, what the songwriter's going for as far as lyrics here. And I think sometimes it's okay to be comfortable with silence. It's something I try to work on a lot, and I'm not the best at it, but this project's kind of helped me with that. I'm the type of person that if we're taking a 5-hour road trip together, I can be like I am right now and just blah 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 talk talk talk, and I'm fine like that. But I'm also fine just kind of just chilling and just sitting there listening to the wind outside the window, or listening, to music, on the stereo or something. So I think the obstacle with instrumental stuff is you have to make it entertaining.
Yeah.
You have to have things in there that make people want to listen to it, but you also have to convey that feeling without words.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you mentioned the words. Yeah, I know they're called lyrics, but I mean words, as in the language,
Hmm.
is it can be helpful to express your emotions, but it can be just as much of a hindrance as well when you go to some places that are hard to explain. But you can paint a picture in the air and in the ears with your sounds that sometimes is easier to portray than it is to spell out with words.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there were some moments I can recall where, I mean, if you think about different types of media outside of where music isn't like the main focus, like if you think about a movie, or you think about, like a video game or something, right? So when I was younger, I was really big into the Final Fantasy franchise, and I remember playing eight. It was the first one I ever played, so it kind of has a special place in my heart. But some of the big moments in that game were really had that emotional impact in the story because of the music that was being played by that composer. And we're not talking about super high quality orchestra scores and stuff, and things like that, but it lended itself to the moment of that story. And movies, same way. If you watch a movie, and I've seen some good examples of this on YouTube, you can watch certain movie scenes, and if you take the score out of it, you take the music away from it in the background, it doesn't convey that same
Right.
that same feeling. So
Right.
I think some of the instrumental bands that I listen to, that I feel like they're kind of laying that soundtrack, to my life at the time, at the moment that I'm hearing it. So
That is so cool. I've never heard someone say it like that, but I've often said that of myself, that certain times in my life, certain songs or the sounds of the movie are like a soundtrack to my life. And I've never heard anyone
yeah,
say that. It's pretty cool.
yeah, and people can hear, and I think that's the challenge with sometimes discovering new music, because we all see it, you know, when you start to kind of get up there a bit in age, it's difficult to sometimes not rely on only the things
Hmm.
like, listen to those 5 or 6 albums that, are your top favorites just over and over again without branching out and finding something new. But we all have those songs and albums that, like, I hear something by a certain band, I hear either a certain album or a certain song, I'm like, oh, it reminds me of this part of my life. And
Yeah.
sometimes depending on how long we've listened to that song or that band or album, it can, I have some songs or albums I listen to, and it not only reminds me of like a specific time period, but a few different time periods, because
Right.
a
Right.
song's been with me for a while.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you mentioned. You said when you left Kentucky. What fun fact? I actually live in Kentucky, and I forgot that you were from
I
here.
remember that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I forgot. That's cool. But you said when you, I think it was when you moved to South Carolina. You said you were going through a tough time, uh, and you had. Can you expound on that if it's not too personal? Can you get into uh, some things you're going through and had to get over, and kind of really zone in on how you addressed your issues and how you grew through that process?
Sure. So, you know, I was born and raised in the area of Corbin in southeast Kentucky. I'm sure you're
Mm-hmm.
familiar.
Yeah.
Um, we moved to where I'm at now in Southport, North Carolina, in about '06. And at the time, actually, everything was fine then. Um, but that rough period that I mentioned was more about, I don't know, uh, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. And it's the same story that, a lot of people have is, I've been doing the same job, the same type of career for a while. And it was, very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's during the time period my guitar is just sitting around collecting dust. I should have been playing it. I wasn't. And so everyone has to find a way that they're going to cope, with stress, no matter what that is. So
Right.
I did like what so many people, especially, musician minded people did, is I just didn't cope with it in the right way. It was a lot of sitting around, watching TV, staying up too late, not getting enough sleep, drinking too much,
Yeah.
things like that. And I'd finally just kind of hit that logical point of, and it wasn't, I'd like to think that I would have come to the realization on my own. Maybe I would have, but I think sometimes that realization is always helped along by your support system. I'm fortunate to have a lot of good friends and a wonderful wife. And, sometimes you have to not only um, hear their concerns or advice, but you have to actually listen. And, I finally had just hit a point where I was like, I'm putting all these coping mechanisms in the wrong place. And that's when I finally just thought, well, you know, music never hurt me or let me down. And people use music to cope. And I love music. So why am I not doing that anymore? And so that's when I made the conscious effort to, pick the guitar up again. At the time, I still, had a full drum set. I had to move it and go to a much smaller one I can keep in the closet now, a little electronic set I really only use for recording. But I went back to playing drums again, and if I was in, you know, feeling down or bad about myself or my situation or anything like that, pick up the instrument and play something. And it, for people that really love to play music, it does help. And so leaning on that more, it was just kind of a way out of that. I mean, and it's not, oh, woe is me. Everyone has their own struggles, of course, but I'm much more fortunate than most. My struggles are just a dime in the bucket to many. I am completely self-aware of that, but that's just what helped me out of that anyway.
Well, I think that also you said your troubles aren't as much as others, and on from an outsider perspective, it's easy to say one person has more troubles than the other, but what it really comes down to is how it affects you mentally and in your heart and in the internal struggle. So I'm careful not to ever underplay someone's struggle or what they're going through, because it may look easy to one, but it may be hard for another. The same exact thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, because everyone's point of reference is different, right?
Yeah, and
I
their life
mean,
experience and everything. Yeah.
yeah, just because someone might live in a different country under different circumstances or something like that, it doesn't mean that you and I, can't, have rough times, because we do too, but our frame of reference, excuse me, is different. That's all. So it doesn't exclude us from being able to, have rough times, we're absolutely, allowed to do that. But I do like to try to be a little self-aware in the oh, woe is me stuff. But
Yeah.
I I know it's interesting though, because
Hmm.
like, talking to you today, I mean, there's part of me that's like, well, what in the hell am I doing on a podcast, actually being the person interviewed? Like, I'm supposed to be the person listening to the interviews, you know. But when I listen to interviews like this, because I do like podcasts a lot, listen to them a lot, is yeah, I like to hear that stuff. So
Yeah.
why not, get into it? So
Well, that was kind of the idea behind this podcast was how, I have my own story too of things I've gone through and how I've overcome them and how music and art is such a big part of that. And I've met some people and online, and I just find that that's the details might differ, but we're all on a similar journey, and I just wanted to make a platform to share those journeys with one another. You know what I mean? To help us all along the way. So thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate it.
oh,
And
absolutely.
it sounds like when you when you're kind of picking yourself up out of that and start playing music more, it's it's like you took your music as a tool or a technique, a method uh, to basically self improvement, if you will, or stress management, basically just taking care of yourself, and that's I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think I think it is a very, in almost every way that I can think of anyway, a a healthy coping mechanism to begin with. But especially for folks that already know how to play a few chords on a guitar, or a simple up and down beat on a kit, or a little bass line on bass or something. um, it's already great for them. But I also encourage, you know, if there's anyone listening that, you know, you love music and you're a fan of it, but you've never played, um, I hear all the time about people that are in their, like mid 50s, and, they're starting to learn how to play some cowboy chords on guitar or something. And they're doing it because they went through something, whether it's a divorce or, a death in the family, or and they don't know where to turn to, and they kind of use that as, well, why don't I, why don't I go to the music store and sit down and see if maybe there's, a little Squire or something I can pick up for cheap. And
Right.
I guess they're actually not as cheap anymore,
Yeah.
but it's always a good time to start if you have an interest in it.
Yeah. Well, I think the Squires are still cheaper than Gibson, so that's still a good recommendation. Yeah.
Very much so they are.
Now, how do you think, or what do you think about the the way a creative individual may think or deal with things? Do you think that's different than someone that isn't as creative? Do you think that has a bearing on how we handle life and how we, um, manage life?
I think so sometimes. I think with a creative mind, there's pros and cons to it. I mean, I know that, being uh, creative to at least a small degree, helps me, in my day job, when I'm faced with, problem I need to solve or something. Maybe I think a little bit more outside the box and things like that. There's also some cons, with it too. I mean, this is speaking generally, of course, but most musicians are, well, I mean, most musicians are crybabies, right?
Yeah.
um, they feel emotion sometimes, very heavily, in the good and the bad, and the bad ways.
Right.
So I think you have the pro of using it to help you problem solve with, everyday life. But then you also have to just make sure you keep, sometimes maybe emotions in check, I guess, could be maybe a negative of it. But overall, I mean, I'm glad that most of the time anyway, I'm glad that I have that mindset.
Yeah. And I'd like to ask about your sound as well. Get a little into your music. I really love the dynamic you have between your prettier melodic guitar parts and then your heavy riffs and your solos. I really like your style. Is there something that
Thanks.
Thank you. You're welcome. Is there something that drives that, or is that just totally natural? That's just how you do it, or is that kind of on purpose?
It's probably a little bit of both. Um, every once in a while, I'll sit down to do something, and I'll make an effort to, hey, I want to make this uh, be something a little bit different. I want to step outside of my comfort zone,
Right.
outside of my sound, and I want to make something different. And then I'll sit down and I'll start doing the parts, and I'll do come up with like maybe some nice chords or something, and then do the drums, the guitar parts. I normally will do the bass last, but I'll put it all together, and then I'll be like, yeah, this is pretty good. But then when I actually hit play and listen to it, it's like, oh no, this is exactly like my other stuff. So sometimes it is by accident, but no, I am a huge fan of dynamics in music. There was so many bands and artists and songs out there that a lot of my favorites have that dynamic going. It's really, really, soft, easygoing chorus or something, and then followed by, a harsher, heavier, or I meant verse,
Yeah.
followed by a harsher, heavier chorus
Hmm.
or bridge or something like that. And not, there are some songs of mine that have that dynamic back and forth, and then there's also some that's one or the other. Like I've got some songs that are a little bit more like, oh, this is just soft study yoga music, and then
Yeah.
some that's like, okay, this is just like music that, as my mother tells me, makes her want to drive very fast,
Yeah.
so but there's some that kind of have that dynamic, I am a huge fan of it. I love songs like that.
Well, what kind of visions or goals do you have coming up for Saves the Witch? Either
Well,
near or you know in the future.
well, I've been a little bit lazy about recording for about 7 or 8 months now. When I did the first album, Elements of Alchemy, there's still some good songs on that one. I wasn't. It's not the best mixed album. I view it as barely passable, if that. But that's just the self, you know, uh, critic in me. But with that album, everything came together very quickly. I was recording stuff as quick as I could, because as soon as I finished one idea, I had another one coming in. Released that album, and then immediately started getting new ideas for a second one and started recording them. And I'd say I'd written about half of the second album right off of the heels of having released the first one. And then the rest of the second one came at probably more of a normal pace. Put the second one out only a year later. That was kind of a probably not a good pace to set for myself, because I'm probably most of the time not a one album a year person.
Yeah.
Right now, I've got about 9 songs fully done and mixed and ready to go for a new album. I really just want to get maybe 2 more ideas, finished, and then I hope to have a new album out. Maybe this summer. I think that's a realistic goal, taking my laziness into consideration. That's all I really want to do right now, because I figure if I've been sitting on some of the songs for this new album so long that, I kind of just want to get it out there and let that chapter be done, so I can go ahead and start on, whatever the next, real album is going to be.
Right.
As far as goals, beyond getting the next one out, the project's going to keep going. There'll be, a fourth album eventually. But I would like to explore potentially some of my older styles as well. That's the wrong way to put that, actually. It's not so much I want to experiment with those old styles so much as I want to get, I want to allow them to inspire me a little bit more.
Hmm.
I've toyed with, doing vocals on just a song or two, in the future or something like that. I haven't really found the right song for it yet, though, and I'm not, pressuring that on myself. I just want to see, kind of what else happens. I mean, right now, I'm a little indie. Hardly anyone knows me, especially in the area that I live, and I'm completely cool just putting some stuff out that I really like, and a few people, around the world, will stream maybe a few times a month or something. As long as I can still, I mean, even with all the inactivity that I've had recently, you know, I can pull up, my streaming sources and stuff, and I can see that every so often it's like, oh wow, there's some people in Chicago that's,
Hmm.
listening, to my first album this week. Like,
Oh,
what
that's
in the
cool.
world? Like, how? Like, it blows my mind. There's people. I tend to get a pretty good listening in Charlotte, which I do enjoy because it's only 5 hours from me, so I kind of see that as somewhat local.
Yeah.
And then sometimes that's another good thing about instrumental music is that it's more worldwide. So I see like
Right.
sometimes like I was on a radio show a year or two ago in Brazil, and ever since then I have some streams that just kind of show up in Brazil. And it's like, wow, that's they're either finding me by accident or they heard that radio show or something, right? So
Yeah.
um, I just want to keep going. Really, that's the only thing I can say. I don't have any illusions to like, oh yeah, I want to go out, and open for this big band or something. Like that's never going to happen, and that's cool. I just want to keep putting out music that hopefully a few people, will like.
That's great. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said keep going. That's that's the main thing. Just forward momentum. Regardless of what the goal is, but keep going rather than being stagnant and stopping. You know. And
Yeah, it's hard to do.
yeah, and you mentioned putting it out and having some people listen to it, but I think you know the biggest thing is doing it for yourself, isn't it? Like if it as a artist, like it's your nature to create. It's like we said, it's part of how we deal with life, and
It is.
that's the main thing. And then you're taking the next step by putting it out in the world, and people now and forever into the future, as long as it's available, it could still make someone's day. And that's the beautiful thing about it to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could walk out to check my mail today and get hit by a bus, and I mean, someone's still going to be listening to my second album probably, next week. It'll survive far, far when I'm gone, hopefully. But I, so you're absolutely right when you say that at the end of the day, you have to do something because you enjoy it. Would if I opened up, my artist Spotify a month from now and saw that, I just people completely stopped listening, would I just take all my guitars, throw them in the trash?
No, you
No,
could send
no,
them to
I
me
mean,
before
I
you throw them
wouldn't.
away.
Noted. I'll write that down. Okay, send to that and
Yeah.
leave that. Okay,
Okay.
I'll call my. After we hang up, I'll call and I'll have my wheel altered for you.
Awesome.
Um, so, but at the same time, I think it's important, to put out there because I'm not trying to, you know, yes, it sounds good the way I present it and that, well, I do this thing and I put the music out there and I see that there's, some people that are listening to it. But I also think it's important to talk about kind of what goes into that some because there are some people that I know personally that are indie musicians, much like me. They know they're always going to have a day job. music is just a part of their soul. They have to exercise, and they release albums.
Yeah.
So they'll put them out on Spotify and YouTube and this and that, and they're completely cool with that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I probably could be like that too. However, I don't want anyone to have some illusion that I just put this stuff out there and people just found it. Like I do promote.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I spend money. I do social media ads. I mean, I do put effort into the marketing side of things. And if I had not done that, I I have such a small listener base, but it's there. If I had not done the promotion, it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
People have to have a way to find you. I was a person that used to think, when I put this album out, someone's gonna just come across it and they're gonna like listen to it and then it's gonna like blow up. And it's not really how it works most of the time. When I put the very first album out, I got the initial amount of plays and streams and things like that from like family and friends, just like a lot of people do.
Right.
But then that's also when I kind of decided, like, well, I could kind of let it mellow out right there, or I could actually, try to put a little bit of money aside and, try to promote it. So when I release things, I do promote it. And believe it or not, there are some people that, some indie musicians that almost kind of look down on that a little bit, but I've never shied away from it. I've never been ashamed of it. When I do finally get this third album, locked in, I mean, I've already started putting just a few bucks back here and there because, I mean, I'm going to promote it.
Yeah.
I want it out there. It's all well and good to say that, hey, I'm doing this for me, because that is true in a non-selfish way, it can still also be true in that, well, yeah, I've got this and I've released it and I feel good about it, but now I want people to hear it. So
Yeah, you took the words out
it's,
of my mouth right there. Because I was going to say that you can be fulfilled it personally about it, but just whether it's music or anything that you make or have, like if you love it, you want to share it with other people. Most people do. You know,
yeah.
so I don't think there's
And
anything wrong with however you go about that, whether you pay for promotion or find other ways to do it. Like just trying to share it with others is literally the whole concept behind it.
well, there's a, I think there's a stark difference between promoting your music and then trying to do something artificial. Like, for example, I get targeted, because of, the website I have for my music and stuff like that. I get targeted by spam just like anyone else.
Hmm.
And I get these, emails and spams all the time. That's like, pay 150 dollars or whatever, and we'll play your song this many times on Spotify. Give it a. So there's a difference, I think, between actually like doing something artificial, like buying streams, which, by the way, is a good way to get kicked off platforms. There's a difference between that and just simply paying to get it out there, to get the message out there, and then it's up to them. If they click on the button that says "Listen now," great. If not, okay, cool. But I wouldn't have known about any of my favorite bands if I hadn't have found out about them somehow, be it a commercial, or maybe a friend told me. But if the friend told me, where did they find out? Right?
Right.
The word of mouth is great, but it only gets you so far. It has to get started,
Yeah.
somehow.
Well, in this day and age, there's so many resources to help you do that. I remember you talking about favorite bands. It made me think of, my teenage years. I'm 44, so I learned about bands just from my friends, and we'd share tapes. There wasn't. Well, MTV did come out eventually, but then I didn't have MTV in my house, so it was a very. Well, I don't know the word. It's your friend group was like a big what do you call it, a place where you'd get information and get bands, and not swap stuff around. And it's just like exploded now worldwide because of the internet. It's just a whole new world. So there's really, if you want to promote it, there's no excuse that why you can't.
Yeah, man, I remember. I don't. I wish I could remember exactly the model and the brand. If I did, I'd look it up and send it to you, but I can't. But I remember being a kid, and my parents had this cassette player that was like a pretty big size. I guess it was like a boombox kind of style, and
Hmm.
we kept it in the kitchen. And with cassette tapes, of course, you couldn't pick what song. You had to fast forward and rewind, and whatever newfangled boombox this was they had at the time, you could put a cassette in and hit play. And once a song started, if you wanted to skip it, you could leave play pushed in and hold down fast forward, and it would click. And it would like it was like noise detection, I guess, and it would detect the breaks in the song. So it would be like skipping a song. You just had
Wow.
to sit and listen to it, fast forward through it. And, then we went to like CDs and stuff, and, all the online stuff. But yeah, it's like you, when I think, because I'm a little bit, I'm 38, so
Yeah.
got a few years on me. But I remember with my friends, like burning CDs for each other, like, oh hey, I got this great album, let me burn it for you, and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Now I know not everyone's like this, but I was always the kind that they'd burn me that CD and I'd listen to it. And if I really loved it, like, it wasn't enough for me to have the burned CD. I'd be like, I need the artwork too. Like, I'd
Yeah.
go to
Yeah.
like the Sam Goody or something and pick,
Yeah.
Napster sold more albums because of me than I ever pirated.
Right. Right.
Because I'd download something and I'd be like, wow, this is great, but the sound quality is horrible. I'm gonna go buy the CD though now that I know I like it, right? So
Yeah. Same here.
I think
Same
it
here.
sold it. I think it sold a lot of music.
Yeah, plenty of burned CDs, but that leads you to, if you really love something, you're gonna go get the real thing and put a few dollars in that band's pocket.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Well, what you mentioned, the new, getting songs together for the new album. What's your timeline on that? Or, well, you mentioned this summer. Is that you looking to release it this summer, or just finish, continue working on it?
I I don't have anything set. One of the good things about being independent is, the only person I answer to is me. Um, you know, I would like to release something by late summer if possible. What I'd like to do is at least one, but hopefully two more songs that I have not conceived at all yet. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I have some ideas. I keep a bank of some ideas and some melodies around, but I'd actually like to put maybe two brand new ideas, with this collection, and then put it out. I've already released uh, three singles that will be on this album. I think three's probably enough. I had the kind of chuggy metal one I did last, being the Intrepid, which that one I liked a lot because when I think one of the more interesting parts of the creative process when it comes to releasing music is if you're going to put out an album of 10 songs, if you're going to do any singles, which ones are going to resonate with people the most.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard because what I like the most might not be something that other people do. And so when I've released most of my singles, I didn't do any singles for the first album. I kind of wish I had, but I didn't. But when I did the singles for the second album, I I guess I picked pretty well because Embers and Ashes, which was on the second album, is still one of my most played songs. I felt real strongly about that one, and I think it resonated with a few people. But the last one I did, Being the Intrepid, it was probably one of my worst performing singles, but I kind of expected it to be. I really just did it for me. It was inspired by a real life event that I've kind of obsessed with. And I just thought, I haven't done a heavier single before, so I just feel strongly about this one. I just want to put it out, and if it does well, cool. If not, then that's all right too. It's not the great thing about being independent, at least in my case, is that if it doesn't do well, I'm not losing anything really.
Right.
Because if it does well, I mean, it'd have to get 5 million streams for me to make back the, you know,
Right, right.
the money I put, you know, promoting it or whatever. And maybe actually that's figures a bit off, but but you know, you have nothing to lose. But I always did think it was interesting what goes into picking that song. Now, when you have a top tier band that's part of a huge record label, of course, they have a big say in the commercial part of it.
Sure.
But, you know, when it's independent, it's like, well, we have these 9 songs, but which one do we put out front for people to hear? You know, there's no right or wrong answer sometimes. Um, but yeah, I don't know, I always found that fascinating. Like, how do you pick? You know?
Yeah. Well, I want to rewind just a minute there. You said it was inspired by real life events, so I'm sure someone listening, and I'll put myself in that category too, wants to know the story behind that latest song.
So some people, and again, the song we're talking about is the most recent single,
Mm-hmm.
being the Intrepid. So the song title itself somewhat cryptically gives away the event, and certainly if you listen to it, there's voices, there's you know, voices that kind of aid in that. Some people will know, maybe some won't, but that was inspired by the what everyone refers to as the Miracle on the Hudson, when Chesley Sullenberger landed that airliner in the Hudson River. And I've always been obsessed with that incident because I just admire the leadership and how calm that Captain Sullenberger was able to stay when faced with such adverse events, and to save all those lives. And not only that, but to be like the top tier at your craft, you know, in his case, flying a plane.
Yeah.
Um, I just always thought that was amazing. And to this day, I follow him on, you know, like LinkedIn and socials and stuff. I've somewhat tried to get word to him that the song exists. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd say he's probably never gotten those emails, because I'm sure he's got handlers, you know, but maybe he's heard it, maybe he doesn't. But I've read every book he's written, and I remember in one of them he described liking to listen to some heavier music when he's on his runs and stuff. So, you
Oh,
know, part of
nice.
me likes to think that maybe he added it to his playlist. Probably not, you know, but he'll probably have a bigger chance of hitting the lottery tomorrow, which I'd also be cool with.
Yeah, that would be
but no,
absolutely
that's
fine.
what it's about.
That's
Uh,
cool,
to,
man. I love
to,
hearing about the inspiration behind pieces. Thank you so much for expounding on that.
yeah, that was a fun one to do too.
Well, Eric, I know you got an appointment coming up, so I don't want to make you go over. But before we close, I would love to give you a chance, give you a minute or two to uh, give a word of encouragement to other artists that might be going through a slump or might be in a little rut right now. What kind of encouragement would you give to these people?
My encouragement would just be to, there's a movie that's really quirky. Some people listening probably know it, but it's called That Thing You Do, with
Hmm.
Tom Hanks and Tom Everett Scott. You know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I haven't seen it
So
forever, but I think I have. Yeah.
I love that silly little movie because I think it captures the intricacies of playing in a band so well. And I know I don't play with people anymore, but there's a specific scene of the movie where, you know, Dale Paxton, this legendary jazz musician, that the drummer, played by Tom Everett Scott, actually, like, he loves Dale Paxton. It's his hero, and they actually are talking, and Dale Paxton tells him as advice, you know, for the young drummer. He says, "You just got to keep playing, no matter with who." And I think that is the best advice a musician can have sometimes, is just keep playing. You know, it doesn't matter what gear you have, you know, what, you know, the label is on the headstock of your instrument. If you're having a tough time, you're having a tough day, you know, lean on that instrument, be it a guitar, bass, drums, keyboard, anything at all like that. Theremin, did I even say the word right? But
Yeah.
whatever it is. Lean into that. Let it, you know, be your therapy. And if you need more therapy than the instrument's giving you, seek it. Seek help, not just even professional help, but talk to your friends, talk to your support system if you're struggling with things. If you're not struggling with things and you just want to play music better, the advice is really still the same. Just keep
Yeah.
playing. You know, I can sit down, and I can learn some kind of tapping part or something like that and start to become really good at it and feel like, oh wow, like I'm really shredding. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And if I let the thing sit in a corner for 4 weeks and don't touch it when I should, I'm gonna lose a certain part of that. I might not lose the muscle memory, but my fingers are going to get slower. I'm not going to be able to do that part anymore. So it's something you have to keep up. You have to nurture. It's like a tree. You have to nurture it for it to grow and to branch out to the places that you want to go.
Oh, it's like you said before, just keep going. That's what you said
Just keep
of your
going.
own, you know, perspective, and that's good advice. I love it. Uh,
Yeah, keep
Stay on
keep
the
playing.
line real quick before, when we get off here, so I can speak to you just for a second. But I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today and sharing sharing intimately about your experiences and your life and your music. And I want to encourage everyone to go check out Saves the Witch on the socials, stream his music, buy his music. He's a good dude. Hit him up on Instagram. He'll talk to you. He's a friendly guy. Eric, thank you so much
Thanks.
for being on today, man.
Hey, really appreciate it. That it was a pleasure.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye.